All right, before the break, we did a real quick pass at collections, starting into collections. We technically don't have arrays in Python, but that's what we call them, because arrays doesn't show up in normal English, whereas list and set and dictionary do show up in normal English. And what it means to a computer, as far as a data structure, database is storage, data structure is memory. So what it means as far as a data structure is very, very different than we use those words in normal English. So array is just our generic term. Usually if a bunch of software developers are sitting around talking to each other, right? Because from the context, so to say array, and we'll know which one it is specifically. And there's lots more still to come, but that kind of finishes up the tools for the second time, because you would have seen all the tools in prereqs, just a new combination of them. And that's what the rest of the software development degree and then experience in the field that jobs always ask for is seeing more and more ways that you can combine those tools to solve problems. Is there an infinite number of combinations we can put those few tools into, right? Our storage and the sequence we go in, our selection structures, our reiterative structures, and our invocation structures, which allow us to jump out of our sequence and come right back to where we came from. So a function, we can leave our sequence, go do some other stuff, and come right back to it. That's the four types of tools we have. We can put them together in an infinite number of ways. And build lots of pieces of software and get all the way to a finished piece of software. So that's why I want to talk about this thing, the next little thing. It was never mentioned in a single programming class that I took, any lesson I had on programming. And I will extend lesson further. I'll go all the way back to 1988, and way before a lot of y'all were born. But it really was like somebody flipped a switch and kids were no longer allowed to stay home anymore. And before that, we just stayed out. If our parents had something to do, they went to work. If you were past the age of 4, then you were old enough to stay home on your own. But in 1988, it really was like somebody flipped a switch and that couldn't happen anymore. And there weren't any daycares. There wasn't anything to do. So they kept the school open. And to keep it interesting, they tried to make a bunch of interesting classes. So it wasn't normal schoolwork, the things people were talking about. The music teacher's husband was a programmer, so he showed us, a bunch of us, how to program stuff on Apple IIs. 4 years later, when I wrote my first video game in summer of 1992, sitting at home on a farm that was no longer a farm anymore. It's about a year and a half overgrown by that point, but there was nothing to do. Miles and miles and miles from town. I was 14. I was getting ready to turn 14, so I definitely couldn't go anywhere. My brother was 15, so he didn't have his license yet either. And my other sibling's younger, so there wasn't anything to do. So I used memory of 4 years earlier, and through trial and error, figured out how to make a stick man, dribble a basketball, and throw it through a circle. I call that my first game. It's much easier now that we can look stuff up. There was no Google back then. The internet itself was brand new. Certainly didn't have it out in rural Washington County. But figuring that out, tutorials I looked at, all the classes on my way through the program, because then around 2010, I found myself between jobs. First time I went to school, actually it wasn't the first time, I think it was third attempt at school. I did audio engineering. But around 2010, the thing people were most likely to mess up was fixed. I still have all the equipment, so I could record a band. Got mics and cables and all that. But music's a lottery ticket. If used car guys aren't paying to have a commercial made, it's not a job. So audio engineering wasn't really a job anymore. Didn't know what to do, so I came back to school to get a degree in computers. One thing led to another, and eventually decided to be a teacher. But I've had a lot of classes and tutorials and experience with programming, and this was never mentioned. When I graduated from Ivy Tech with a programming degree, and I started writing programs to try to help pay for the rest of my bachelor's in mathematics at IUS. This school is expensive, as you're all well aware, and I struggled to pay for community college. So then I went to a 4-year school, did a little bit more of a struggle to pay for it. I figured it out on my own. And it was way harder than it needed to be. Because right now, what do we call a finished product? We write our Python script, and you'll send me that Python script. Then I download it and hit run. I'm way behind on that. I still have some chapter 2 ones to grade. I noticed on the list today. I will get caught up on that soon. I will back up on grading. Hopefully by the end of this weekend, I will be caught back up on grading. It's pretty much just this class and the Tuesday, Thursday class is the only thing I'm still behind on grading. But I'll get those caught up soon. But I download that Python script and open it somewhere where I can edit Python and so I can read it and then run it. But in all the years you've been around computers throughout your life, most of you all, computers were around long before you were born, right? Computers were pretty well established in our world before most of you all were born. They were invented, they existed at least before any of us were born. Having one at home in 1987, I was one of the early people that had one at home. But computers existed for a long time before that and were already making an impact in the world. So they've been around for a while, and all the years you've been around computers, have you ever gone to install software and had somebody give you a Python script? That's not how it works, right? That's not the finished product. And another step along the way. Can we really trust our end user enough to just hand them a script? I see a head shake no quick. Right? Let's look at our example here. One from class, which actually there's 2 of them, so I'll close out a spider. Because the program's finished, right? We did some stuff the other day over in the kit stuff. There's payroll version 3, and then there's 2 versions in here. I'll grab 3.10, which I believe included this one and this one. So our program also requires those other 2 files to run. One with our data, and then the one where we output stuff to, because we're saving all the old output. We don't delete the pay stub. People might ask for that, right? IRS might come and ask one of our employees to pull up their pay stub from 10 years ago, and we better have that on file because our employee probably doesn't. So those really go with our program. So I'm going to copy those and come back up to my delete folder and make a new folder. And I'm going to call this finished. And paste that in there. All right, our program is finished. We're ready to do stuff with it. What do you want to do? Do you want to add stuff to the database? We hire a new employee. We got to run weekly payroll, or are we just going to exit? Our program's done, right? We just double click on it. Have you ever started a piece of software that way? When you download software to use, have you ever started Microsoft Word by just double clicking on the exe file? We go to the start menu and hit start, or we put a shortcut on our desktop. Okay, that's how we start software. So that's the first thing we want to do. But then let's say we choose option number 2, enter Sally's hours, so 34. Bob worked 29 hours, and Becky worked 38 hours, and David worked 37. And we hit the end of our program. If you wanted to keep the console open there, you can put the word pause at the end, or a good trick in Python is set an input at the end. Like set an input and then say press enter to end. And that way it's waiting for input, and then after it gets that input, there's nothing else to do. But that keeps that open. But we don't really need to worry about that. Like, we got the end of our program, and over in our weekly pay, it's asking me to upload. There is today's payroll, right? We got the current date and calculated the payroll for that. So we have that in our database. So those files, the one holding all our data and the one where we write our data, are very important. But can we really trust our end user to not go through and delete those? The look can be like, I don't know what employee sequential is. Get rid of that file. That might be something dangerous. And then when they do that, the program's no longer going to run And they're not gonna go tell their friends that they deleted random files on their hardware. They're gonna just tell all their friends that your software doesn't work. Right? So we don't even really want to trust them, the users, to just double click and start it. What we want to do is use a batch. Well, on Windows, we'll use a batch file. On Linux, we have a shell script. Can either be in Bash or Zeesh, or even PowerShell is very popular anymore. PowerShell was one of the ones Windows did very, very right. So Linux and Apple both abandoned their plans to make a modern operating system control language and just integrated PowerShell. So like, okay, Windows did an awesome job on that. We're not going to waste time trying to do something that's not going to be as good as what they did. So PowerShell works on every system. So on Linux, you'll need Bash or Zeesh or PowerShell, which you set up as a script, and then the top line has a shebang for which either says bin/bash, bin/zeesh, bin/pwsh, depending on which terminal you're currently running on your system. Mac actually has a .command file, but nobody uses it. Everybody uses the shell.sh because the .commands are overly complicated and unnecessary. The shell actually works better. But we're on a Windows system, so we're going to use a batch file. So I know there's at least one Mac user here. So the logic is the same. It would just be a different language for your script. It'd just be the script appropriate for your system. And then when we get to the automated software in a few minutes, it's a different automated system, automated software that's made for Mac. But the general idea is the same. So what we actually want to do is we want to create a small script that starts this software. When we run it, what are we really doing? If I hit Alt-D and open command prompt, here in File Explorer, it opens it right where we're at. It's also PowerShell. I have Bash and Zeesh. I have all of them running my Windows system as well. But most people are on Windows. That's the majority, so that's the one I have to cover in class. It covers the majority, and then if logic's the same for the other ones, and if you have questions, let me know. You need to type a shell script instead of a batch file. And to start that, well, if we, I'll type dir, list out what's in this directory. So we see this is the folder that has the script, has the actual program. So to run it, when we double click on the picture, what the operating system does is it says start the Python interpreter and run payroll _ 310.py. And that's where the script runs. 11, maybe Thanksgiving week, and then it gets to the end. So that's what actually happens when we run our script. So what we want to do is create a script that does that. And we can do it for whatever terminal we use. A batch file is the one for command. PowerShell is the updated version of command prompt with modern languages. Command prompt and Bash and Zeesh and all those were created back in the 1970s, where we had to abbreviate everything because we couldn't be wasteful with RAM. It's a precious commodity. And we certainly didn't want to waste RAM on programmers that knew what they were doing. So everything was abbreviated and you have to memorize a bunch of stuff. PowerShell also has a modern syntax. So a while loop and a selection structure in PowerShell look a whole lot like a while loop in a selection structure in Python. That modern appearance. We're going to look at that soon too. That'll be our third pass at all the tools, and we're going to do that one in under 40 minutes. I will actually set a time as a timer, and we're going to go through that entire one in under 45 minutes. So you can see that as we learn that, all we need is the syntax in a different language to repeat things we've already done. But going to a batch file, we need a script that does this. So to do that, like always for scripting, we go over to a text file, go over to the text editor, and save this wherever I just put that, and delete. Here's the finish folder. So instead of double clicking the actual program to run, I'm going to make a new script called payroll tab and give it the .bat extension for batch file. And a batch file is where we put command prompt instructions on Windows. The first one we usually want to put is echo off. Otherwise, it prints out every single thing it does, and that gets really, really annoying seeing that on the screen. So always start your batch file with echo off. So it only prints things out when we specifically tell it to echo, to print something to the screen instead of every single step along the way. But we can do stuff here. So we could say, open Chrome with the argument https://youtube.com/search_query and hook on funny plus cat plus videos. There's an instruction we can run, unless I made a typo. But now if I switch to the large icons, you'll see it recognizes that BAT extension, and we got something with gears in it. If you're on a Mac or Linux, your instruction to do that would be slightly different, but basically the same logic. You would just run your instruction to start Google Chrome and go to a particular website and enter something in the search bar. So if I run that script, did I hit an arrow? Was I supposed to type start? Languages blend together after a while. I'm going to hit pause, or I'm going to type the word pause there. So pause does press any key to continue. So you probably want that in your batch file for debugging. I think I was supposed to put start, not open. There we go. Yep. Oh, I typed that wrong. Q equals that, I think. Nope. I'll just go to YouTube and search for funny cat videos. Oh, I typed that a little bit wrong, but we can put that URL right into our batch file, and any instruction we can pass into the computer, anything we can click on is actually just calls one of those instructions in the background. And well, we don't want to look at YouTube and funny cat videos. That was just an example to show that we can pass in any instruction. What we want to do is pass in start the Python interpreter, and then start payroll_310.py. Actually, what we want to do is selections, REM for remark is a comment. So that's a comment, selection structure to see if data files are there. REM is the keyword for comment. I'm going to skip over that because that's going to look like a mess here. Because the idea makes sense, right? We run a selection structure in this language to make sure employee sequential.txt and weekly pay.txt are present. And then this is the script we want to give the user. And then we hide our other stuff way down deep in there somewhere. Oh, I need the word start again. Start Python. Start the Python interpreter. Oh, payrolls. And again, pause just automatically does the print any key to continue. So if you need to continue, it'll show error messages. And then it starts up our program. So we can say like 23, 34, 45, 56, and run our program, and then the press any key to continue to finish out.
Or I actually want to see how you start the batch script again.
So we want to start payroll.
No, how you started the days that script. The
How-
payroll batch,
Give it the extension .bat. File extensions are only for the computer. That one that one earlier has .py, that's only for the computer, that's not for the.
so how did you get there?
But
Before this, how do you go to this page?
I can start a text editor.
Okay,
Any place you can type the text. You have a text editor,
yes,
right? You at least have Notepad.
yes,
So open your text editor. You can type this in Spider. Whatever text editor you use, I'm sorry. We always write code in the text editor. Our code is text, so anytime you see me writing code, it's in the text editor. I'm using the Sublime text editor here. It is kind of a really nice one. The Sublime text editor makes use of a GPU. So it doesn't just run through your CPU. It goes through a GPU, and if you have a computer that also has a data processing unit, all three of them, then Sublime text editor will make use of all three of them. So it's kind of a nice one. It's free to use forever, but there's also a paid for version. It's like $100 and you get it forever, every single update for it. And it's really, really nice. And they made an awesome, awesome product that is well worth $100. So I'm going to pay for it. If you don't pay for it, it just says unregistered up at the top. But I really, really like the product. You get it. They're the only ones that have a text editor that will make use of a GPU. So no matter how big your script gets, it will never get bogged down from lexing and other stuff going on in the text editor. It's processing it in a GPU. But that's what we want to start. Because, well, we skipped over the logic there, hopefully makes sense. We run a selection structure, make sure those files are there, and then we start the software. Or we get those files. We write them or recreate them or download them from a backup along the line or something. We do something, or absolute worst case, ask the user to reinstall it. There's an important file missing, right? We don't just let the program crash. And then that's what we want to start. But we don't really want to start on that one either, and I'll show you why. So we go to properties, you'll notice for a batch file, there's a very short list of tabs here. But if we make a shortcut, right click and create a shortcut to that batch file. Now, if we go to properties, we have a very long list of things, including a button to change the icon. So we can make a new icon for our thing. I'll go over to Microsoft Word and make a new icon. Or not Word, Paint. That's a quick, easy one. I'm going to Paint and grab the calibri sheet green and then draw a $sign. There we go. There's a good icon for our program. So I'll save that in the same place. Icon. And now if I change icon and come here, is it looking specifically for an ICO file? Okay, Windows 10 started letting us use pings, but if it wants to go back to ICO files, look for ICO converter. Sorry. Go online and look for free ICO converter. ICOconverter.com is what I've been using for a long time. It works really well. So choose our image, and it's going to be that one we just did, except we have a ping file and we need an icon file. Choose that, switch to a 32-bit ping, convert, and there it is as an ICO file. So now if I come back over here, Get that out of the way. And in downloads, copy, paste that in there, and now we should be able to change that icon to it. So I'm going through the steps quick, I know. We are going to see them again. I'm not going to see it once and expect you to remember it forever. I'm talking about the steps. You go in here and start clicking around because obviously there's a lot of wiggle room in how we do this. But does that basic premise make sense? We don't want to trust, we can't trust our end user to not go and delete those files that are needed. Hit apply. And zooms get in the way. Let's take the zoom out of the way. Now, our shortcut, move right over to the desktop. And that's how we start software, right? Close that. That's all this is going to do. So I'm going to go ahead and close that. This is what we have when we install software, right? We have that icon on our desktop. It represents what program it is. And when we click that, so those steps took me longer than it should have to figure out and get it really polished off. Obviously, some wiggle room. That's why I'm going to do it fast now, and we'll see it again at the end of the semester. Okay. Preview, review, see it a couple times, help commit it to memory. But there's some wiggle room, so you can start clicking around with the things you know and see what you can get, maybe little adjustments that make sense in your mind. We want to run weekly payroll, 43, 39, 22, and 40. We got our weekly payroll. And over here where it writes, Zoom is just always in the way. Over here where it writes, there's the most recent one written today. Well, that's what we want to do when a piece of software is finished. And installing it is just copying and pasting those files. So we want to copy and paste those files and put that shortcut on the user's desktop. Delete it from here. We bring that in here because apparently it deleted it. We want to take all of these files and put them on a user's desktop. And for that, we'll run it through some software that will automate the process. It's a whole bunch of command prompt instructions. This, and this, and this, and this, you'll want to put in either program files or program files x86, because those folders do not have write access. Those are read-only. And that way nobody can change the program once it's copied and pasted. It's basically copy and paste that over to Windows user. To install is to copy and paste that to either program files or program files x86 because there's no write access. Oh, actually our database shouldn't go there because we can add data to the database. So we do need to write on the database. So those three need to go to someplace with no write access. Then these two need to go someplace where we do have write access, but the user's probably not going to randomly stumble across them, wonder what the file is, and just delete it without looking into it. Okay. We'll put it someplace safe. Even though we have a batch file, we'll put it someplace where we can still write to it, just buried way deep. And this one, on C drive, Windows folder, System 32, about 10 more levels deep is a folder called Start Menu. So we want to copy and paste that icon into that folder so that we have it over here. So a bunch of really long instructions, but they're always the same. Kind of like what we call task-oriented programming. Task-oriented programming, you summarize with destination and location. Go to this directory, make a change. Go to destination, go to another directory, do one thing, carry out a task. So very tedious, very repetitive. Doesn't take a lot of intelligence to type. which means it's the sort of programming a computer can type. Because it's tedious, repetitive, and we know exactly what it's gonna be because of the directory structure on the computer. So we want to automate that process so we don't have to. Lots of them out there. My recommendation is always go to Google and create an installer. Create an installer software. Maybe this will find it. Software installation tools. So there's 4 great tools. NullSoft, advanced installer. You can see there's a GUI kind of follow through it. A bunch of them. That's always my recommendation is look for those best of 4 great tools, those lists, and then read that blog because that's also going to tell you what you want to look for when you compare them. So you can find one you like. Create it manually. I would make it should be a maybe best software too. Like everything else, there's lots and lots of them. So here's 5 best, and I bet all 5 of them are different than that other 4 best list. 19 best. Read through that. That's a lot of things to download and try and see which one you like. One I've used most often is Install Forge. I'm just going to download this because then I don't have to put much thought into learning a new one. But usually things are clearly labeled. And if they're not clearly labeled, we don't want to use that one, right? If it's not clearly labeled, we're not going to figure it out by clicking around. So we'll go uninstall it and then install one that is clearly labeled so we can figure out what to do. Yeah, install this. And this, where the wizard pops up, that's the executable. That's the .exe installer. So Install Forge makes these. This one was actually made with Install Forge. Obviously, they're going to use it on their own product. So we have control over which picture's there, what it says there. Next, we put in a license, or we could leave a license out. We usually want to put in a license. Where's it going to install? Oh, we need write access, so we don't want to use, oh, wait. Install Forge, yes. I will go ahead and install Forge in program files x86, because I don't want to accidentally change Install Forge. Next, desktop icon, start menu, we get those options. And we're going to start menu. When we click the checkbox and install Forge, it puts the options here. It isn't included or leave it off. It puts the checkbox for the user to choose. So this is the exe file made with the install Forge. So we'll make a little wizard to walk through like that. The other one for Microsoft is MSI, and that's the one where you just click it and it runs all the way to the end. No options or anything. But again, you would just download software and try a few out, see if you can find one you like, and then run it. That's not on the new stuff. All apps. Oh, I forgot to put a folder. It's under Install Forge is under a folder called Salicious. We can put it in a folder or leave it at the top level of the start menu. But it's like 12 folders deep to get something on the start menu. That's a lot of digging around in a directory structure named by a computer to find the folder we want. Kind of hard to do. We want to add it to the registry. But you see we have this nice little GUI to fill out. Product name.
So we have to fill all those out?
And now we'll just fill out the form. Payroll, this is version 3.1.1. I will put the dots here since it's not a file name, because the dot means something to a file name. That's why I was just leaving it off there. Company name is going to be SDEV 140. That sounds like a good name for the company. Give us a website, https github.com/Francis-Chris5/SDEV 140-fall 2022. I know that stuff's on this one, so let's just go ahead and click support all Windows operating systems. That works. There's really only one option we absolutely have to do. It's on this page. Look at the tabs. Look at the tabs in the main content area. Can you guess what the only option we absolutely have to select is? You should notice a quick key. How many languages do you speak?
2.
So you know a couple, right?
Yeah.
So will just any installer work for you? Or is it gonna have to be in French or English?
No. Probably.
So we absolutely have to check what language to write the wizard in. And it will translate it, so it knows these. Others know even more languages. This is certainly not every language on earth. So you can look around and do different ones. I'm just gonna do English. But that is the only thing on the GUI. That, and then the programs we want to install or the files we want to install are the only absolutely required things. The others are a good idea. The user interface tab here is referring to the wizard. So what picture shows up there on the left of that wizard that we click through when we install it? Or header image, what image shows up in the little corner when we, on the wizard when we click through to install? So all the options here are about the installer, so not your software. When have your software set up beforehand. And what do we want to install? Let's add a folder. I'm going to go in my documents. If I can find it. Where's documents? There's documents. And I want to install everything in that finished folder because that's the stuff that's our finished app. So you see there's nothing really complicated here. But notice that directory structure down at the bottom of the screen. It kind of looks like there's some variables going on there, right? We have to work a lot of that stuff in. There's gonna be options along the way and we need variables to put them. So it's not just typing in the directory structure. Makes it a little tedious to get together. All of these others here are advanced. Skip the rest of the setup tab. So that's more advanced.
Please, back to general, I want to see the website.
Oh, I put the GitHub for the class. You can leave it blank, but since this code is going to be on the GitHub for the class, you can grab it off the GitHub. Every other class that I've shown this in before, I always left that blank.
Okay.
And when I went to tab past that box, I realized I had something to type. So I didn't want to leave it blank for once.
So it can be blank,
It
right?
can be blank. Only thing you have to have is the language and what files do you want to install. Everything else is optional. And it's optional for the wizard, so the wizard can look better. Everything in setup is advanced. So skip that for now. Come back to that come back to that later when you've had a lot more, when you know a lot more about computers. Right? The thing you hate to see in a job interview or job postings right now, 10 years experience required. Come back to the rest, those other 4 options in the setup tab when you have 10 years experience with computer programming, 10 years of experience with a software developer. Otherwise, you're probably going to encounter something new along that process. But there is a default version, and the default version is probably what you're used to seeing in most of the software you install. A splash screen is a little picture that pops up for a couple seconds while it loads. It used to be important in the days of disk drives. The biggest time delay was moving the read write head to the correct spot. And we wanted to make sure the user knew something was happening. We didn't want a blank screen while that happened because it might take a minute. Sometimes we have to wait for everything else the computer is doing to finish up. And then it gets around to our stuff. So we throw up a little picture with a meter that was completely arbitrary. It had no relation to what was going on, but there would be a meter moving, so the user knew something was happening. That's what splash screen is for. Just don't leave your user hanging. Let them know something's going on. Don't throw a blank screen. License on GitHub. You should whenever you create a new repository, we go to the one for our class, which I have so many repositories that won't let me scroll on that homepage where I like to go to anymore. have too many. So if I go here, when you create a repository, you probably want to go ahead and include a license. They have all of the standard licenses there. Apache, MIT, and BSD are your standard open source. That's the feel free to use this. I'm not responsible. Use it at your own risk. Do what you please with it. So let's use that one.
So the splash screen should be checked.
I think you just leave it blank. It just shows a picture. It shows an arbitrary picture so that the user doesn't have to. The user knows something is happening while you're waiting. Yeah, everything else is optional. We already said what language and what files, so everything else is optional. But a license is a good idea. Oh, here it is. So I'm gonna come down here and copy the whole Apache license, which I apparently can't use Control-A. Put all that legalese, a whole bunch of professional lawyers, put that together. And whoops, I copied too far. Let me try that again. There's the start of it. So go ahead and put those on your repositories so you have a place to grab it from. So Apache is one of the 3 big standards for use at your own risk. I'm not responsible. And if you click this box, the user sees the license. Otherwise, they don't see it. They still have to agree to it. If you don't click this checkbox, they just don't see the license at all. Validation, finishes, start afterwards. You can ignore those. License is optional. Actually, everything else is optional. Registry is fairly advanced. Again, registry and shortcuts. Registry come back to you later, but shortcuts we can do. Zoom is covering up the menu. So these checkboxes, that's not what I was trying to do. I was trying to make that smaller. Put a black screen behind it so it's easy, so it stands out more. So these checkboxes put the checkbox on the wizard. They do not force the user to have to do that way. These checkboxes are to put the checkbox on the installer. Yes. So whether you want them there or not, desktop for all users, start menu for all users, default path menu. I'm going to take out a folder. I don't want to put a folder. I'm just going to start right at app name. So we're going to have a folder, and then up here in shortcuts, we'll add a couple shortcuts. Desktop shortcut, give it a name, payroll. The target file is where it's installed, and what we installed is this folder. So we will go, so install path goes to finished. That's what we installed. So let's go ahead and go into the finished folder. So wherever we put it, we put the finished folder, and inside of that is payroll app.bat, and it will create a new shortcut forward file for us. So we want to go to the finished folder and payroll, that one that we actually start, and I forgot how I spelled it. Lowercase. Payroll underscore app.bat. So the batch file, and then where's the icon file, which is in that same place. It's an install path / finished, but our icon is, I think it's just fave icon. I didn't change it, did I? It's just fave icon in all lowercase. That's the one that was generated. Might want to change that to something, you know what it is. But fave icon.ico. We're in preview mode tonight, just letting you know what to expect as you head on down the line. So a fave icon ICO file. And if there's a bunch, you can choose by index instead of file name. But I would just type the name for now. And then probably a start menu in as well. Shortcut name will be payroll. Payroll app. And wherever we installed it, we're going to go in the finish folder and start payroll underscore app.bat. And our icon is an install path, which is a variable. That's gonna have a finished folder. And it's gonna have something called fave icon.ico. Scroll down. Now we're down to the button that says build, so maybe go ahead and hit save. And we might as well save it in the same place, right? Save it here, build. So this is the file to build the installer. This isn't the installer itself. But we can, if we save it, we can come back in. We don't have to start from scratch. Right? We don't want to start from scratch every time because we kind of know what's going on. We might just make a typo along the way. Then we go to build. And this one always throws me off. So setup file, we have to actually navigate to it. And give it a name. So I'm going to go into that same folder and give it a name. Payroll installer. And notice it's the entire directory. There's so many times that I've just typed the file name and forgot to do the whole directory, which is, it has to be arbitrary for any computer it goes to. So it'll adjust the directory when it gets there. And when all that's ready, save it, and then hit the little gear icon up here to go ahead and build it. This is just a text file. You all know how quickly text files write up here. That was a long time to write a text file. So you can do that text file by hand, but it just took the computer that long to write a text file. And you all know how much quicker than you a computer is at typing. Computers type in like hundreds of words per nanosecond. They support that. So I'll minimize that. I didn't mean to run automatically. So now if I go over here, there's our familiar installer icon. Everybody recognize it? You can't see it on the Zoom call, but I got that message. Do you want to allow this app from an unknown publisher because I didn't sign it? Didn't put any signature on it. Has no idea who it is. Your antivirus software will probably freak out. So you might need to run it a couple times till you figure out how to build an exception into your thing. But generally, software developers just uninstall antivirus software. Because if you're writing a program, if you write programs, your antivirus software will hate you. It will see all those crashes from debugging and think that you are just running tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of viruses that are constantly crashing. So most software developers just get rid of antivirus software. Don't do that yet, but when you know how to fix any of the problems yourself, then do that. So this stuff should look familiar, right? It'll install it, didn't include a picture, but we could change that. Next, oh, yeah, the Apache version 2 license, I'll accept that. This one's a problem. I probably should have changed that because this folder does not have write access. So you probably don't want to put this program into that folder because then we couldn't write to our data anymore. So I'm going to install it somewhere different. I'm going to go up to the C drive and just give payroll its own folder because then I will have write access to it. Create a desktop icon. I must have made it. Oh, I know what I did. If I come back to shortcuts, I made 2 desktop icons instead of it. Let me go in here and edit one of those. Make one of them a start menu instead of 2 desktops. But we can see the desktop work. Right, so the first pass through, debug your installer. You all know how to debug stuff. Miss that installer, but the desktop will work. Hit next, preparing to install. And that's what it should look like when we install software, right? That's what it should look like when we finish a piece of software. I always like to cover that in every class I teach because that was never even mentioned in a class that, class I took. Oh, I skipped one other one. Is it under build? Oh, uninstaller. Include uninstaller. An uninstaller is just a delete. Normally our stuff's gonna be scattered all over a bunch of different places, right? Some of it in program files x86, so it can't be changed. Some of it in another place where we can change it, and we'll scatter things around. So we might need a complicated installer, but install is copy and paste, and uninstall is just a delete. But this was a simple installer, so to get rid of that, if I run it, double click on the desktop, and there it is. Right, this is what we're used to. Go to number 2, 33, 34, 35, and 36. And we should have another one on, oh, whoops, not that one. That was our test case. So don't open the test case. Go to where that was installed. Program file, oh, I gave it its own thing, payroll. And there's that last one. Excuse me, I am sorry about all the coughing. It's the seasonal change. I've smoked for 30 years. It happens in the fall and the spring. When it gets cold and when it gets warm again. It really, really shows. I apologize. I'm trying to hold it in, which actually probably makes it worse whenever I can't hold it in anymore. That's where that's coming from. But I apologize for that. So there it is written in there, but you can see the program works just like it did. But now it does what we would expect it to do if somebody told us, yeah, I got this software for you. This is what we would expect them to give us, right? Security protocols will let you download exe installers. That's the only type of exe file you can directly download, and your antivirus won't panic because installers are different. It'll recognize it's an installer. But I wanted to go over that because it was never covered in a single class that I taught. Uninstall is just delete. I forgot to hit the uninstall checkbox, so I just need to delete that because it's only in one place. So that's fine. But when you have the uninstall, if you click that uninstall checkbox, it shows up in control panel like you're used to, right? You go to control panel, and then it will put it in, it will add it to this list. But that install is just copy and paste, and uninstall is delete, but we probably want to do it that way. I know that was very, very quick. You'll see that a couple times. Does that process make sense? See how that can be a little tricky to figure out if you have to do it from scratch? It's the only thing I was ever shown about Python, about any programming in lots and lots and lots of languages over lots and lots and lots of years. That scattered passes through schools, working on different degrees and all sorts of stuff, including learning on my own. That was never even mentioned. So I try to include it in every class. An important thing. That's what we want to do when the app is finished. So that's when it's finished. You've seen all the tools now. So now the rest of software development is practice, gaining experience with different combinations of how you can put those 4 tools together. We're looking at a big one next week. Does anybody have any questions about that?
Yeah, I don't. So these modules to install the script. The script we created earlier is the payroll, right? So we started by writing the script, by writing the script.
Yeah, write your program.
By writing the program, the payroll program. Then this is to install that like a software, right?
Yes. Okay. So this is where you should finish.
Okay.
And there's another step
I didn't have payroll script.
There's
right?
another step along the way. You want to write your program. Then you want to create that shell script or batch script or PowerShell script, whatever operating system control you're using, and have the operating system confirm it's okay to start your program, which is just a selection structure, and just look up the syntax for this for a whatever type of terminal script you're writing. Then make sure it's okay to start your program. And then the installer will start that script that starts your program. It can be dangerous to just give the program directly to a user. They could mess something up with it. What if they open it with the text editor and start making changes? So there's those extra little steps, but that's the process after it's finished. But yes, you do have to have the program that you're trying to install. But that's the general steps. We will look at it again quickly at the end of the semester. I know we went very, very quick there. Does anybody else have any questions about it? If not, that was 5 seconds of silence. And Joseph, I wrote down an equivalent software that I like on the Apple Store and left my notebook at home. So I have to, they changed the name from the last time I installed it. So it took me forever to find it. So you probably want to search for the new name. So I will let you know what the new name is to do an equivalent thing on. If anybody else is on Mac, throw it in the chat room. So I'll send you the name of the other software. Or I could just send it out afterwards. I'll send it out as an announcement everywhere. That way everybody has it. Otherwise, that was it for tonight. We got 30 minutes left on our time. I will be sitting here waiting for questions to come my way in case anybody has any. Otherwise, you all have a great weekend and I'll see you on Monday. If you have any questions, send them my way. This one has the stop button.